When you're writing JavaScript with React, pretty much everything is a component, and those components are made up of elements. In this video, we'll talk about what might interest us about components. Components are the building blocks of a user interface at whatever level of granularity you think is appropriate. You'll usually have one big one containing everything else, and then it's up to you to figure out what the others should be within that. Defining a React component means writing a function or a class. We'll look at which you'll use in more detail later, but for now, functions are simpler and lighter, also a little less powerful. Classes can do everything that React supports, but are a new feature of ES6, so you might need a polyfill called createReactClass to help you with this. To get started, you can usually just work with functions and then enhance them as you need to later. Components are meant to be reusable, by you for certain and maybe by others as well. If you have a slideshow, for example, each slide will be the same component reused for each instance of a slide. Because they're meant to be reusable, React has a very vibrant ecosystem of components others have written for creating almost any kind of widget you might need. Installing these third-party components can be a little tricky if you're not using a build tool like Webpack, so be aware it might take some digging or help from the components developer to support an unbundled build like the one we're using in this course. Components can also be abstract, like the transition components we'll be looking at later in this course to help support animation. Because they're abstract, it can be a little confusing to think of them as components, but hopefully it'll become clearer with practice. Components are made up of elements, meaning HTML elements in our case. If you're working with React Native, you'd be creating different kinds of elements that would support features of a native app. But they're all generated by special JavaScript functions. When thinking about how to build something using React, an important early step is looking at a mockup or a wireframe and mapping out what the underlying data are and what components you'll want to build up to achieve your vision. We'll be doing that in each of the examples that follow.